One of the biggest changes that has been made in the Rings of Power series is the depiction of Numenor, and it has turned out to be a terrible mistake by the showrunners. In the Silmarillion, Numenor was the island kingdom of men that was gifted to them by the Valar after the War of Wrath. These men were the descendants of the three houses of the Edain, and their island kingdom became very powerful. The Numenorians would become the longest lived of all men, and their lifespan would far surpass that of their counterparts in Middle-earth. The first king of Numenor was Elros, who was the twin brother of Elrod and the son of Eärendil. The Numenorians would later set sail for Middle-earth, meeting Gil-galad and teaching the men of Middle-earth much of the craft they had learnt from the elves of Tol Eressëa. Over 1,000 years after the War of Wrath, the Dark Lord Sauron would rise to power, and his armies would overrun the elves of Eriador. In what would turn out to be one of their greatest acts, the Numenorians sailed to Middle-earth, attacked and defeated the armies of Sauron, and freed the elves of Eriador in the process. The Numenorians would then set up their first colony in Middle-earth after their victory over Sauron. However, despite his defeat, Sauron's cunning and deception would later lead him to formulate a plan to destroy the kingdom of Numenor, and this plan would revolve around the mortality of men. For though the Numenorians lived long lives, they were still mortals, and would die, and many Numenorians were afraid of death, and wished to have the unending lives the elves and the Valar had. But mortality was a gift that had been given to men by Eru, and the Valar did not have the right to alter this design, for men, like elves, are children of Eru. And because of this all men, including the Numenorians, were prohibited from sailing to Aman, for only the immortals were allowed to live there. Many in Numenor would come to resent the Valar for this ban, as they saw themselves worthy of immortality. Their desire for glory and power led the Numenorians, and in particular the king's men, to become aggressive colonizers, where before they had been teachers, and they accomplished this with whatever means necessary. Though a few Numenorians were still faithful to the Valar, most lost their faith and morality in this time, and it was this that the Dark Lord Sauron would later capitalize on. And the Dark Lord would use Ar-Pharazon, the king of Numenor, in his plans to destroy the island kingdom. Ar-Pharazon was a man of great stature and strength, but he had an unyielding will, and was of a prideful nature. He was raised to be a staunch follower of the doctrines of the king's men, and this was a section of Numenorians that had grown to resent the Valar, because they could not attain immortality from the Valar. Ar-Pharazon would lead such men on many conquests in Middle-earth, and they would subdue many men on both land and sea. This caused him to become infamous in both Middle-earth and Numenor. Following the death of his uncle, King Tar-Palantir, Ar-Pharazon would usurp the rightful throne of his cousin, Queen Miriel, by forcefully marrying her. In his capacity as king of Numenor, Ar-Pharazon would become the most powerful king in the history of Numenor, and this only further increased his pride and arrogance, which the Dark Lord Sauron would later capitalize on. Sauron taunted Ar-Pharazon by adding more realms of men found in Middle-earth to his empire, and due to this Sauron would even earn the title of King of Men, which was a direct challenge to Ar-Pharazon. In answer, Ar-Pharazon assembled an army and attacked Sauron, and the army was so powerful that upon meeting the enemy in Mordor, Sauron's forces deserted him. Sauron would then be captured and taken back to Numenor as a prisoner, which was the fruition of Sauron's cunning plan. In Numenor, Sauron would become the closest advisor of Ar-Pharazon, and this further turned Ar-Pharazon and his king's men from Eru and the Valar. In this, Sauron urged the king and his followers to construct a temple dedicated to the fallen Dark Lord, Morgoth, and they would make human sacrifices of those who were still faithful to Eru and the Valar, in the name of Morgoth, in this temple. Even the White Tree of Numenor, whose seedling had been a gift from the elves of Tol Eressëa, was cut down. However, even with all of these great crimes against Eru, Ar-Pharazon could not attain immortality, and Sauron would then convince him to make a great fleet and attack Valinor to claim the right of immortality by force. Once his fleet was complete, Ar-Pharazon and his followers sailed to Aman, and he and his forces would even take the Hill of Tuna. The Valar then appealed to Eru to intervene in this matter, and in answer, Eru sank the fleet of Ar-Pharazon and the island kingdom of Numenor, and as for Ar-Pharazon and his army, they were buried into the ground and are still imprisoned in the caves of the Forgotten. Ironically, Ar-Pharazon got his immortality, but like all the immortals, he is bound to err until the last battle, Dagor Dagorath, when Arda will be remade. And Sauron too did not escape the wrath of Eru, for though he had achieved his goal of destroying Numenor, Sauron's body was destroyed following the sinking of Numenor. His spirit escaped back to Mordor, but Sauron would never again take on a fair shape. Following the sinking of Ar-Pharazon's fleet and Numenor, Arda was reshaped by Eru, for it was made round after the sinking of Numenor, where before it had been flat. The result of this was that a man was separated from Arda, so that men could never again find a direct path to the Blessed Realm, where they were forbidden to go. Not all the Numenorians were destroyed during the sinking of Numenor, for before this great cataclysm, the few faithful in Numenor were warned to leave the island, and these were led by Elendil. He would sail to Middle-earth, and together with his sons Isildur and Anarion, would set up the kingdoms of Anna and Gondor. This is only part of the lore that is set in the Silmarillion about the island kingdom of Numenor, and it's a great story that the showrunners were given the privilege to adapt, and yet they have contrived to create an incoherent story that is nonsensical, and worst of all, disrespectful to Tolkien's work.